Oh my God. Wow, I sound fat and old on here. That's not true, right, Andrew? Right, Andrew?
No, no. I think I must have the fat and old filter on.
Yeah, take that one off.
Oh, it's back.
We need the eyelashes and the sparklies.
Yeah, we need something.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh, the Instagram filters.
Wait till they have the smell filters. That'll be interesting. They'll have the smelly
No.
filter.
Are they going to come out with that?
I'm sure they are eventually.
They had smell-o-vision at one point, I think.
Right?
Yeah,
Well, everything seems impossible until you do it.
yeah, until it happens.
said
Until
that-
until it's right in front of us,
The
right?
Wright brothers, they said that there wouldn't be flight for 100 years, probably 2 years before they did it, and then they did it.
Well, they probably did that to swerve everybody, right?
Swerve. Yeah, right.
There was I remember hearing a story where there was like somebody else was working on that and working on it and working on it, and they gave up, and it wasn't too much long after that the Wright brothers.
That's what always happens, man.
Yeah.
Everybody, they always give up right before they hit the finish line.
People don't want to push that extra mile. We rolling, Andrew? Yep. Oh man,
Oh.
we're going.
We're live.
Oh my God, we just wasted valuable seconds of everybody's lives. Hey, everybody.
We apologize.
Welcome to Mark Bell's Power Project. I am your host. We got my boy Andrew Zaragoza as our podcast engineer, and we got Dr. Beau Hightower in the house today. What's going on, Doc?
Greetings and salutations. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, awesome having you out here. I've seen you on YouTube, seen you on Instagram, smashing people with a rubber mallet, with a big giant hammer, and like a metal chisel. And then people are like, you're digging in on someone's shoulder or digging in on their hip, and then all of a sudden they have this huge range of motion improvement. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, man, is this for real? Like, what's going on with this thing? Like, this can't be, you know? And I've seen a lot of stuff over the years. There's been some great advancements with soft tissue work and some of the different work from different people all over the world. And, you know, I've had a lot of stuff done to me, had a lot of stuff that has helped somewhat, but hasn't really, you know, been something that has really affected, I guess, my day-to-day in a positive way, I guess you'd say.
Right.
Other than just the exercising and eating well and that kind of and sleeping, like the normal shit, right?
Yeah.
But you know, the stuff that you're doing looks like kind of next level. And what I liked about it is that, especially seeing you now in person and having some of the stuff done to us today, is that you're not like, oh, I'm just going to take the hammer out and hammer everybody.
Right.
So what the hell is going on with this method? First of all, let's kind of start out with that.
Yeah. So I guess it goes way back. So we talk about bone setting. There's this big misconception that, you know, chiropractic is some unique entity, and it kind of is in America, but these forms of manual therapy have always existed, and they exist in other cultures and have around the world. So if you look at Oriental medicine, if you look even at Europe, there are variations of different manual therapists, naturopaths. We have osteopathic physicians in Spain and the UK. And you look to the East, and we have different types of methodologies. And so the different ways of bone setting have existed forever. In fact, the first bone setter was Hippocrates, the father of medicine. So these types of methodologies have really existed for a long time, and they've been tried and true. They wouldn't exist if they didn't work to a certain extent. And we feel the same way about, you know, a lot of Oriental medicine, things like that. But what happened before was we lived in a pre-scientific age. So when something worked, nobody knew why or how it worked. They would just do it on everybody. And so what we've tried to do is to take some of the things that have been proven tried and true methods and try to peel them back and reverse engineer them and figure out why they work. And if we can figure out why and how they work physiologically, we can apply them to the right patient population. So that means that every single person we see is getting the right therapy for them. So when you look at some of these therapies, Toksec is one of the variations that you'll see in Vietnam. It's an Oriental form of medicine. They're hammering muscles. And if you guys have probably seen some of those viral videos of like Indian doctors with the hammer, you know, hammering people's spines, and everybody goes crazy in the PT world. But there is some level of validity to everything. And if we can figure out when and where to apply it, we can get some great results. So that led us to take a look at bone setting. And we know that structural alignment is important. Muscle tone is important. Muscle balance is important. Fascial health is important. So if we were trying to influence the bone system to get bones where they wanted to be, you know, say your Achilles needs to move in or out or your shoulder needs to move forward or back, how could I influence that? Well, popping it isn't really a very specific way to do that. It's manipulation. It's the most common form of manipulation. So what we wanted to look at was a very specific linear-driven way to move a bone in a certain direction. And so that's kind of how this came about. And we're using that in very specific ways to create very real changes in all of our patients.
And for yourself, where was the first time that you saw it? Like, were you kind of like researching some stuff, or did you have like a mentor or something like that that led you to some of this stuff?
So some variations of it. So we've seen the Oriental version, and that kind of piqued our interest. And then one of the fighters that I've worked with in the past, Alistair Overeem, he had a medical doctor in
You
Holland that
can't
would do
just
a
drop a name. You can't just name drop
well,
like
yeah,
that.
we'll name drop it, man.
Damn,
Name drop
Alistair
it.
Overeem. I love that guy.
The Ream.
Yeah, what a savage.
That is a savage. He had a doctor, a medical doctor in Holland that would do a variation of this as well. And so we started kind of eyeballing some of that. So we started practicing on each other, the therapists, the PTs in our office, the chiros in our office, and we started having really drastic results. And so we started using it on some of the fighters. And as we started to figure out which populations it worked best in, we really started to focus in on where and what we could help. And that's, sacroiliac dysfunction, frozen shoulders, and that's kind of what we've gotten famous for on YouTube is those kind of issues. And then, when those don't work, that tells us it's not necessarily a bony fixation issue, and we can work our way back into dry needling, soft tissue, whatever else we need to do until we get the results we need. Even if that means that none of them work and we have to pass them on to a surgeon or for somebody with PRP or stem cell or whatever else. As far as medicine goes, I mean, I think one of the big issues is the shortage of doctors. I think that they're oversaturated as far as work. I think that the insurance companies don't want to pay for anything, so they're having to work harder for less money. And really, it's a scam if you think about it. So we have these great students, and they do everything the right way. They have a 3.9 GPA, and they're trying to get into med school. Well, the med schools limit the amount of students that get into it, so they're only going to let 40 in per class. So because there's this supply and demand, what they can do is jack the price of the school up significantly.
Right.
So now they come out, debt slaves, and that determines how they act in the real world too. So now they may be more inclined to order more tests or do other things that may not be exactly what the patient needs, but subconsciously they know that they have to make more payments.
Right.
And I'm not accusing doctors of unethical behavior, but I think that, finances are a part of our subconscious brain. And if you need money, you may be more likely, even like I said, subconsciously, to recommend something that maybe they don't necessarily need. I see this with chiros. If they have a $40,000 X-ray machine, well, guess what? More people are getting X-rays than they maybe would have ordered if they didn't have the X-ray machine.
Right.
It's not even necessarily corruption or anything like that. That's just part of being a human being. So that's part of the problem. So now we don't have enough family doctors, so then we have to run a bunch of nurse practitioners through, and nothing against nurse practitioners. They're great physicians. My family doctor is a nurse practitioner. But why are we creating secondary and tertiary systems of the same practitioner instead of just letting more people in? So that's part of the problem too. So then what happens is we say we'll open a DO school. So the DOs are medical doctors here in the United States as well. Well, they'll let a little bit better, a little bit lower GPA in at 3.4, 3.5. But as a consequence, now they're going to be $120,000 a year. So now again, we're running people into this massive amount of debt. So we don't have enough clinicians. Then we want to give insurance, which is, of course, by nature a scam. Insurance companies only exist because of illogical behavior.
Right.
Insurance, by its very nature, you're going to lose more than you'd have there. Like if you have a house, what are the odds of it? Man, this is the wrong time for the fire ratio in this area. Insurance is a scam. It's like gambling. You'll always lose more than you get in. Casinos shouldn't exist if we were logical, rational beings. So when we're looking at that kind of stuff, the insurance is designed to protect crony capitalism too. So if you have a surgical screw for your hip, you get a patent for it. Now it's a $5,000 screw.
Right.
In true capitalism, right? Somebody would say that's a great thing. I can make that for better and cheaper and get it on the marketplace. So instead of paying $16 for a Tylenol or $200 for a bag of saline or $4,000 for an ambulance ride, we would pay what that would actually cost. So what we say is we're going to say, we're just going to give more health insurance to more people instead of saying we're going to get better health care, we're going to get more doctors, we're going to have more access to stuff. We'll say we'll put universal health care, and then we'll overrun the system even more. So first things first, one, we've got to be able to get the prices down of medications, of surgical procedures, all those kind of things. They're astronomically high, and they're held that way because of crony capitalism. Two, I think we need a lot more clinicians out there. We need more doctors to be admitted to medical school. That way we have more doctors in the field. That way we have people that don't have to wait 3 months, or they don't have to fly to the Mayo Clinic or wherever else to get care. And then three, I think it takes a lot of introspection and maybe more business training so that these clinicians don't have to work in a hospital system. And they have a little bit more freedom by having a private practice.
I think everybody listening to this podcast has probably had this happen to them before, where you go to the chiropractor, they spend 12 minutes with you, they crack your neck and maybe crack your back, and then you leave and you get a bill in the mail and it's like $495,
Whoa.
and you're like, wait, uh, what happened?
Yeah.
Like some of that to me is really crazy, and I never understood why it's not like, hey, this is about how much this is going to
Right.
cost.
That's a rational, ethical way
Yeah.
to behave.
Yeah, but what the service that we're about to do for you, like when you take your car in, for example, the place will call you up and they say, hey, wow, we didn't realize, but it's not just it's not just that your car overheated, but
Right.
there's A, B, and C wrong with it too. Do you want us to proceed?
Right.
They should kind of give you like a heads up, like, hey, here's what we're gonna do. Plus, they could just look at you and say, okay, you're 20 years old. Like, I don't know, you're probably just starting your life. Maybe you
Right.
don't have a lot of
Yeah, you don't have.
finances. Hey kid, like I can crack your neck, for $50, or we can do this and it costs $300.
That seems rational, right?
Right, but it's not like going to a restaurant where there's the steak costs this much, the chicken costs that much, the pasta costs that much. It doesn't work
Well,
that way.
all healthcare runs like this, right? So, like our rehab tech, she had thyroid cancer, and so she's still paying off $16,000 of bills because she had an anesthesiologist that happened to be out of network that came in when she wasn't awake.
Mm.
So, I mean, people
Wow.
get saddled with these bills, and there's no way out of it, really. And like you said, it's not like, and even as far as quality, there's no guarantees in healthcare. Like you go in and have an operation, but what if it doesn't work? Do you get your money back? Of course not, right? But that's ridiculous. If the steak sucked, you could send it back,
Right.
right? I mean, so that's ridiculous. And that's something we have at our practice. Our motto is results matter. So if we don't think we can help somebody, or we don't make any kind of discernible changes at all, we're not going to charge that person, because this is a service rendered. And so if we didn't get the desired outcome or anything near the desired outcome, in my opinion, this goes back to treating people the way you'd want to be treated. I'm not going to charge the money for that. That's ridiculous to me.
Yeah, you're not happy with it?
Right.
Yeah.
100%. And then we never bill anybody. Like you know what the price is for the service. You're getting an hour for $70, and we'll do what we can in that process. And if we can get, our stated goals, 30, 60, whatever the percentage is better, then we're going to continue with care. You can always choose to discontinue care, or vice versa, or we may refer you somewhere else. You may need to see a surgeon, but we'll know pretty well right on the first visit if this is going to be something that's going to work for us. We should see 60, percent improvement right off the bat. And we know that because we have a large sample size. We have 10,000 patients that we've seen in our office. That's a tenth of the population of Albuquerque. No. Math is not my forte.
Sounds about right.
We do have 10,000 patients, but I think there's 600,000 people in Albuquerque. So divide that by the factor. But yeah, we have a large sample size, so we know what this works for and what this doesn't. And it's important to know your limits and your what you can't help with. And I think that a lot of times healthcare clinicians, whatever that might be, because I mean you can kind of define what you're going to get based on the generic profession that you're going to see, right? If you go to the family doctor, what's the most likely thing you're going to get? NSAIDs, ibuprofen,
Yep.
rest. Okay. You go to the surgeon, what's the most likely thing they're going to tell you, right? You probably need an operation. You may need an injection. If you go to a PT, what are they going to tell you? Okay, well, you might be out of alignment. Your muscles are weak in certain positions. The chiropractor tells you your bones are out of place. Massage therapist says you're carrying all your stress in your neck. So you're choosing the type of healthcare service that you're going to get by definition. So people ask me all the time, they're like, can you refer me to a chiropractor in New Jersey or whatever? And I said the same thing earlier. I'm not going to refer you to an accountant in New Jersey either. It's a profession. Hey, do you know a good baker in Vermont? Should I go see a baker? Should I go get an accountant? Well, I don't know. There's a lot of crappy accountants. I would only refer you to an accountant that I trusted. Same thing with a lawyer, right? Hey, do you know a lawyer out in New Jersey that does what you do? No, and I wouldn't recommend you to go to somebody that I haven't had personal experience with. So the same thing goes with surgeons, chiropractors, whatever else. Like, I think it's ludicrous to suggest somebody to go see a certain profession without knowing that person's background, seeing some of their testimonials, and then maybe even having a sit-down consult and making sure that you guys are on the same frequency, the same, vibe. Like, everybody has a different set of values that they need, and that may have to do with religious overtones. That may have to do with, age, all those kind of things. And so not everybody's a good fit for everybody, and we're not the right fit for everybody either. As you could tell, our treatments are sort of intense. And so there are some people that's not going to be for them. So what we want to do is have a network of people that we can refer them to other people. Same thing with other types of stuff. Like I could do nutrition, right? Like I have a master's degree in exercise science, but I know that there are people that are more experts in those fields. I'm the soft tissue musculoskeletal biomechanics guy. So instead of trying to do all those things, instead of selling supplements and all those other things, we want to be really good. We want to be good at musculoskeletal care. And if we need to refer for those other things, we want to have a network of great individuals, at least locally, that we can send to.
Right.
Is it hard to become a chiropractor?
Yes and no.
Mm-hmm.
So when you look at the statistics, so you have to have a bachelor's degree to get in. So you need 4 years of undergrad first. You need pre-med, biochem, all that other kind of stuff. So the admission rate to most chiropractic colleges is somewhere around 44%. So it's easier to get into than pharmacy school or medical school for sure.
Yeah.
And that makes sense, right? The amount of liability and all those other things that go along with it, that makes perfect sense. The actual curriculum, and here's some background on chiropractic, which is interesting. So the profession was founded in 1895. Again, we're at a pre-scientific era, so we're talking post-Civil War. Medicine was treating people with castor and mercury, and we were bleeding people still. So the ideas out there were not very good anywhere. So some of the original chiropractic ideas were sort of pseudoscientific.
I've heard Joe Rogan talk about it before.
Yeah. So, but if we're going to criticize the origins of psychiatry or medicine or whatever else, the origin of everything is kind of stupid because this is a pre-scientific age. So what was going on? They had something called the Flexner Report. So there was a reorganization of medicine in the 19 teens. And so what happened was they were trying to eliminate all forms of what they called quackery. So that included osteopaths who are now medical doctors, that included chiropractors, and lots of other fields of medicine. Magnetic healing was really big around that time. A.T. Still, who was the founder of osteopathy, was also into magnetic healing, which, by the way, of course, there are some nuances to that as well. Like we said, now we know that leeches can help with wound care. We know that magnets can be useful in MRIs. But sometimes our ideas are just off from the beginning, and that seems to be the case with most of those professions. So the AMA put out a smear campaign to try to eliminate chiropractic because they chose not to join the system. The osteopaths chose to join the system, and so now they're essentially medical doctors. They prescribe. And as a result, there was actually an antitrust lawsuit case that was settled in 1982 called the Wilk case. And the AMA, the American Medical Association, and the Academy of Surgeons was found guilty of disseminating false information about chiropractors to the public, to high schools, in an effort to smear them and eliminate them as a competition. And so some of those biases still exist within our society, particularly in older generations. And so it's this weird sort of professional bigotry. Chiropractors, they're in the VA hospital. They work with the Olympic team. Actually, the head of the sports medicine team for the Olympic team for the United States of America is a chiropractor. Every professional sports team has one. They have a niche, right? So they are good at a certain few things. When they try to go outside of those things, we should probably say, hey, what do you think you're doing there? It's like an optometrist. What does an optometrist do? Well, they set you up for glasses. Well, if they wanted to fix your digestive system, you might have to ask a few questions and say, maybe this might not be the right person.
Right.
So as long as everybody's staying in their lanes and works as a healthcare team, I think we can get the right amount of care. But, understanding the background on some of those professions is kind of interesting. So circling back around to your question, chiropractic has always been in competition with standardized medicine, whereas physical therapists were kind of a mid-level before nurses as well. So the chiropractic education has been a doctoral degree since the very beginning. Licensed to the United States, you're required to call yourself such as the government. But the programming is actually identical to medical school for the first 4 years. Medical doctors then go on and specialize to become surgeons and all these other things. So the actual curriculum is really intense. And we take 4 parts to the boards, just like medical doctors do as far as steps. Whereas our physical therapists just only have 1 board examination.
Wow.
Even though chiropractic and PT, their scopes are really overlapping. And in reality, at probably some point, those 2 professions should probably merge because they're doing a lot of the same things.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm only asking because, you put out like a feeler on Facebook or something like, oh, like my neck's hurting. Does anybody have a recommendation for a chiropractor? And you get like 15 different recommendations. And I've been to like 3 or 4 in my life at this point. And, like I was telling you earlier, it's like my fiance goes in, she has a neck thing. Crack, crack, crack. Okay, hey, what do you got? Like, oh, my lower back's been killing me for years. Oh, crack, crack, like the exact same thing.
Sure.
And I'm like, is that just a universal thing? Like why?
No, it's not.
I know, obviously, but it's just but then like the 15 minutes you spent with me, you didn't crack me at all.
Right.
And I feel better. So
Right,
it's
right.
like, that's why I was asking. I didn't mean it in a like trying to put down the practice
Sure.
by saying, is it easy? It's just like, I'm curious. Like, and it seems like, yeah, it's a grinder to even be able to call yourself a chiropractor.
Right. It's it's 3-4 years post
Right.
bachelor. It's a grind, and you have to take state jurisprudence examinations and all the other stuff. You have to have background checks over all this other kind of stuff too. So when we talk about that, there's a fundamental problem in some of these professions being outliers, dentistry and chiropractic being the big 2. Because those 2 fields, they're both doctorate degrees, because they're not really integrated too much in the medical system, there are no jobs in the hospital, generally speaking. There are select jobs for chiropractors at the Veterans Hospital, VA, but they're kind of few and far between. As a PT, you can almost always get a job at a hospital, same with a nurse. And as a consequence of that, almost every chiropractor has to go out on their own as a business person. Well, every person that goes into healthcare is not inherently going to be a good business person. In fact, in a lot of ways, those two things are contrarian to each other. Somebody that spent their whole life working on academia is less likely to be a good business person than somebody that isn't. So now we're expecting these people to be able to run a successful business while managing student loan debt and potentially a business loan. Well, what happens sometimes is in order to survive, sometimes their behaviors start to become repetitive just to be able to make more money. So it creates some sort of ethical quandary, and this is what we're talking about as
Yeah,
far
maybe
as
they're seeing a lot of people every day, seeing like 20, 30
and they
people every
have
day.
to get
Yeah.
to make ends meet, and during that process of getting 5 to 10 minutes, the odds of you having really specialized care is probably going to go down. And so, going back to these complaints we were saying, it's not just chiropractic, it's medicine too. And you're seeing the same thing in medicine now because of the time limits of the hospitals. They get 10 minutes with you and they're backing out the door in the middle of your conversation. And I think all of those things lead to depersonalized and poor patient
Yeah,
care. And it's something we need to address across the board.
I've had a lot of care like that before, where somebody like they take you into like one, like you're in a waiting room, and then someone takes you into like another like a pre-waiting room. Like this is the room where you wait a little bit less than the first waiting room. And like somebody comes in and like does some shit with you, like maybe they check your blood pressure or whatever, and then somebody else pops in, and then finally you get to see the person, and boom, you're out the door. It kind of reminds me of like a restaurant sometimes when you get seated, obviously like the hostess is gonna like seat you, or the host is gonna seat you, and then like a waiter will come over. But I always kind of hate when somebody else serves me the food.
Right.
I'm like, where the fuck did my waiter go?
Right.
Like, I want that like interaction with that person. Like that's the person that's like waiting on me for the night, and like that's the person that I want to tip well, and it's like it kind of seems like you're getting cheated, and
Yeah.
and when you have these other people kind of in and out of these like waiting rooms and pre-waiting rooms and stuff like that, you kind of feel like you're getting cheated. You're like,
Sure.
man, I only saw the guy for like 8 minutes. I had like 87 questions I wanted to ask him, and obviously, you're never gonna get that service to be able to ask that many questions, but you feel like you're entitled to at least a
Yeah.
couple,
Well,
especially after
in
you get
our
that
office,
bill.
you will, but
Yeah.
I-
We asked you a lot of questions today. We made you work on a lot of people too.
Hey man, I'm
Yeah.
happy to do it. Happy to do it. But I think that same experience has had a lot in the PT world and the dental world too. In order to get a PT office going, it's a lot more cost efficient for the owner to have a bunch of PT techs and PTAs. So people go in 3 times a week for 6 weeks, but they're only seeing the same PT once or twice. So the old adage, you want 5 different opinions, see 5 different doctors.
Right.
And so you're getting all these mixed messages, and so the outcomes are not great. Dental office too, right? Like you see your dentist for like 24 seconds. You see the hygienist, they do stuff, the dentist pops his head in and he goes, "Oh, it looks fine," and runs back out the room. And so the way that these businesses are set up, they're not financially viable to have a lot of high-level clinicians, and I think that leads to poor care. And the reason why I made the dental chiropractic analogy is because those people have to be on their own. The margins are a little different. A dental office, the overhead's significantly higher. There's also a lot more money coming in. But what the ADA has done a great job of doing is gaining public authority, so public trust. And so when you talk about who is the public authority in the musculoskeletal world, well, it's going to be probably neurosurgeons, right? Like they're the go-to people, and partly rightly so, but partly that's a consequence of branding and marketing. And so we've convinced people that they need to go to the dentist to have their teeth cleaned twice a year. We even know the evidence may not support that. So 90-something% of people have a dentist.
Right.
It's not necessarily the same thing for a PT or chiro or massage. And so
Yeah, I never understood that. Like, why aren't we getting our blood work done at least every 5 years? Like you're going to the dentist twice a year.
I think twice a year is probably a good idea. If
Yeah.
you can afford it, you should be getting.
And you're
blood work
not
done.
getting blood work should be done. I mean, you should be getting like just your body checked out in general. Like,
Yeah.
are you
I mean,
losing strength and
yeah.
you're losing movement patterns? I mean, that's not good.
Or more serious issues, thyroid issues, cancer, stuff like that, that if you're just getting simple blood work done once or twice a year, you're going to catch it so much earlier that you're actually going to have a shot at beating these kind of things instead of not going to the doctor for 5 years, either A, because you haven't been taught that that's important, or B, because it's so financially detrimental to you that you can't afford to do it. And like these are some of the basic problems in healthcare, and they're not an easy fix, but I don't think we're doing anything to help those kind of things
It
out.
should be an easy fix though, because if the dental community has figured it out,
Right.
like most people do. I agree. Like I don't know what the numbers are, but you mentioned 90. I don't know if that's true or what, but it seems like a lot of people that I know that have dental insurance do go to the dentist.
Right. Or even if they don't, they still make it once a year.
Yeah.
It
Yeah, they're still going at least once a year, but ask them about who their primary care doctor is. They don't even
most
know.
people don't have one anymore,
Yeah,
right?
they don't even know.
For most